Breaking news as the Trump administration brings back the illegal immigrant it accidentally deported. The DOJ says Kilmar Abrego Garcia was involved in a massive human trafficking operation, and it wants him behind bars. I'm Elizabeth Vargas, and America's News starts right now. Tonight, Kilmar Abrego Garcia is back in the U.S. after being mistakenly deported to El Salvador, but his troubles may have just begun.
The grand jury found that over the past 9 years, Abrego Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling ring.
Alan Dershowitz joins us live to discuss. Then the latest on Elon Musk versus President Trump. Could the big, beautiful brawl end as quickly as it began? And later, breaking news, the devil in the Ozarks captured after 12 days on the run. Where was he? And the creator of one of the greatest TV shows of all time, Mad Men, is here to talk about his latest project on the man who killed Abraham Lincoln. Happy Friday, and it's a busy Friday. Plot twist, the Salvadoran migrant mistakenly deported from Maryland to a mega prison in his home country has been returned to the United States to face human smuggling charges. A federal grand jury has indicted Kilmar Abrego Garcia on 2 counts for allegedly transporting thousands of illegal immigrants across the United States, including children and MS-13 gang members.
The grand jury found that over the past 9 years, Abrego Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling ring. They found this was his full-time job, not a contractor. He was a smuggler of humans and children and women. MS-13 members, violent gang terrorist organization members throughout our country.
The Attorney General said Abrego Garcia used SUVs with added seats to carry out the alleged smuggling. That is something that police in Tennessee discussed in body camera video from 2022 when they pulled over Abrego Garcia for speeding and found 8 other people wedged into the car.
How many rows have you got in here? 4?
Where?
4 seats? 4 rows of seats?
Yeah, three seats. Yeah, with him. Yeah.
Did y'all put an extra one in?
Huh?
Did y'all put another one in?
No.
Did it come like this?
Use the truck.
I've never seen one with that many seats in it.
You know what you got, right? You know what you got here, right?
No.
He's hauling these people for money.
Abrego Garcia was previously living in Maryland with his wife and 3 kids. He was deported in March to El Salvador despite a 2019 court order blocking his removal due to fears of persecution. The Trump administration accused him of being a member of MS-13, and El Salvador's president claimed he had no power to return him, saying it would be akin to smuggling a terrorist. After today's news conference, he wrote on social media, "We work with the Trump administration, and if they request the return of a gang member to face charges, of course, we wouldn't refuse." Abrego Garcia's case has been at the center of President Trump's deportation crackdown, a crackdown that ramped up in Southern California today. Video shows federal immigration agents appearing to detain dozens of people in downtown Los Angeles, leading to this moment when a man tried to stop one of the vans and got partly run over by agents. Let's go right now to NewsNation's Joe Khalil, live for us in Washington. And Joe, President Trump just spoke a few moments ago on Air Force One about the Abrego Garcia case. What can you tell us?
Yeah, the president on board Air Force One basically said Abrego Garcia is a bad guy. He's done some bad things. And then he went on to talk about the judges who he said have been, in his view, quote, trying to run the country, referring to the judges who have been trying to make a plea to have Abrego Garcia get his due process and raised issues with President Trump deporting people without that process. On paper, Elizabeth, what he is now charged with, what the government alleges he has done, is to essentially for the last almost decade be an integral part of a human smuggling ring bringing undocumented people from the southern border up through the rest of the country. And it even goes beyond that. It says that he smuggled thousands of people. The document says he was a member of MS-13. That's the allegation, that he transported gang members and children, and that he abused female migrants who were under his control, along with transporting guns and drugs. Now, the government also alleges here that Garcia solicited child pornography and that he played some role in the murder of a rival gang member's mother back in El Salvador, also alleging that is why he had a case for asylum to come to the U.S. in the first place, because there was credible fear that had he been returned to El Salvador, the rival gang could do him harm and target him. Take a listen to what else the Attorney General Pam Bondi said as she unveiled the news that he was returning and being indicted.
A co-conspirator alleged that the defendant solicited nude photographs and videos of a minor. A co-conspirator also alleges the defendant played a role in the murder of a rival gang member's mother. These facts demonstrate Abrego Garcia is a danger to our community.
So, Elizabeth, it's interesting, and the Attorney General did not get the question why they didn't charge Abrego Garcia with any of the other things besides the human smuggling, if they are alleging that he had done several other illegal things. So we will wait to see what they have to say as the days play out here.
Right, very limited charges here, but a pretty wide berth of what they're alleging about him in that news conference. Yeah. Switching gears just really quickly to the very nasty and very public war of words between President Trump and Elon Musk all day and all night yesterday. It appears to have died down today a bit. Where do things stand tonight? Yeah, well, it definitely wasn't what we saw yesterday. And there were reports this morning of a sort of détente that both camps, I don't know if we could have taken another day like that. There were reports that both camps had some kind of interest in solving things, but through the day, President Trump basically made clear he was not interested in having a one-on-one phone call with Elon Musk. So there were reports that there were maybe staff-level phone calls or things like that. President Trump on the plane just now basically said he's got too many other things to focus on. He hasn't thought about Elon Musk. That is at least what he says today to reporters. Okay, Joe Khalil, thanks so much. I want to bring in Chris Cillizza now, journalist, political commentator, and a NewsNation contributor. Chris, always great to have you here. So let's start with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The White House released a statement late this afternoon saying these charges prove the unhinged Democrat Party was wrong and the fake news media were once again played like fools. You know, we did see several Democratic lawmakers trek down to El Salvador to go out, stand outside the prison, and one of them met with Abrego Garcia to champion his release. If these charges the government is alleging prove to be true, are they going to regret those trips?
Well, what I would say is I think you have to separate out, Elizabeth, to me, what everyone, Republican, Democrat, anyone should be in favor of is they accidentally sent this guy down there. This guy is no hero. He is no saint. I don't know if he's a sinner, but he was accidentally sent down there. The Trump administration admitted that. Bring him back and charge him. And then he gets the rights, he gets a trial, and if he's found guilty, he's found guilty. I do think Democrats make a mistake when they try to paint him as this perfect citizen, right? I mean, my view always was, look, I'm not going to get into whether this guy is a good guy or a bad guy. I don't think as a general rule, we should say, okay, we accidentally sent him to this place, but we're not going to work to bring him back. Right. Let's bring him back. Let's give him a trial. And then let's decide, is he guilty of these things or is he not? But let's not decide in advance whether he's a saint, a sinner, or somewhere in between.
The Supreme Court ordered the administration to bring him back. Yep. The administration insisted for 2 months they couldn't. Did the charges come up because of that Supreme Court order? I mean, the question is, why weren't these charges filed sooner against him?
Right. I mean, look, I'm not a lawyer, right? So I can't say, oh, well, yes, this happened because X happened because of Y. What I will say is, this provides a very convenient off-ramp for the Trump administration, right? Because now this brings him back, and says, we are going to try him on these charges, which I think is what should have been done in the first place, right? If this guy is guilty of these things, or at least he needs to stand trial for them, let's let him stand trial.
Right.
Let's not just say like, whoopsie, we sent him to a foreign country, we can't possibly get him back. I mean, let's be honest. It was always ridiculous. If the United States of America, if the president of the United States of America says to the president of Venezuela or El Salvador, hey, we need this guy back, give me a break. Of course they're going to bring him back for a trial. Like, it was always sort of ridiculous. This just gives them, I think, a way to make what should have happened in the beginning happen.
We do know that critics are saying this is a political decision. And apparently the supervisor in the federal prosecutor's office in Nashville resigned in protest over the way this case was being handled. But if he's guilty, how can this be a political decision?
Look, I just wish in politics, Elizabeth, and this is true of both parties, just say when you screwed something up. We screwed this up, but we think he's a bad guy. We're going to bring him back. And you know what? Our judgment, the Trump administration's judgment, isn't final. He's going to get a trial. And once he gets his trial, he'll get due process. And then that decision, he'll either be convicted or he will not be. And let's go from there. It's hard for me to say that there's no politics in this because it became such a gigantic issue a month or 6 weeks. I can't even remember, 6 weeks ago. It's impossible if there's no politics related to him coming back and and how both parties are going to react to it. But again, let's not prejudge this guy. Let's give him due process and then let's see what is found out. Like, to me, the fact that this guy has become a political football is actually kind of depressing. Like, let's let the legal system do its will, and then we can decide, like, okay, but let's not, none of us, well, maybe you, Elizabeth, but certainly not me. No one's perfect. So let's not paint him as either perfect. Let's not paint him as either perfect or the worst person in the world.
Yeah.
Let's do what we do, which is let the justice system work its will, which I think is what's going to happen now. Okay. Which I am thankful for.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are. Chris, Eliza, thanks so much. Abrego Garcia's lawyers say this case involves fundamental questions of due process and civil liberties. And my next question is quite a bit about that. Alan Dershowitz has represented more than his fair share of controversial clients, from Klaus von Bülow to President Donald Trump himself. His new book is all about the tension between the powers of the government and individual rights and freedoms. It's called The Preventive State. Joining us now for more on this is Harvard Law School Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz. Congrats on the book. I'm going to get to it in a second. But since I have your expert legal mind with us tonight, I want to ask you about the Abrego Garcia case. It all centers on this traffic stop back in 2022. He was pulled over for speeding outside Nashville, claimed he was transporting construction workers. But none of the men squeezed into that car had any luggage, any tools. Officers thought it was suspicious, but they let him go. Why did it take 3 years to file these charges?
Well, I think they didn't have a motive to really go after him. But once the judges ruled that he had to be brought back, their attention focused a lot on him. And they better have the proof beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty. If it turns out that he is guilty, he will very much regret having opposed his deportation, because he'd have been much better off staying out of the country and then seeking just relief about where he can go. If he didn't want to go to El Salvador or Nicaragua, he could have filed an application to have him go to Argentina or Brazil, and he'd be a fan. But instead of that, the left, the hard left, made a poster child out of him and made fools out of themselves, and may have caused him more harm than he was in already. And he may be spending the rest of his life in prison because the left used him as a poster child in order to basically criticize the Trump administration. So watch out who your friends are. And in this case, I think his friends, the people who supported him, may have really not done him a favor at all.
The car he was driving at the time that he was pulled over in Tennessee was registered to a man who has a criminal record of transporting migrants. That man reportedly told investigators he hired Abrego Garcia to transport migrants and that he'd been doing this for years. But will the DOJ need more than the testimony of one convicted felon in order to get a conviction?
Well, not legally. typically one person is enough, but with a jury, juries are very suspicious of bought or rented witnesses, people who are paid to testify by getting good deals. So if they have other evidence, it would obviously be strong. He can't be charged with some of the allegations. For example, if he arranged to kill somebody in El Salvador, a gang member's mother, that's out of the jurisdiction of the United States. But if he did things in the United States, I'm sure the Justice Department is very busy trying to make the strongest possible case they can against him. And if they succeed, then it will show that he made a serious mistake challenging his deportation. Sometimes, as a criminal lawyer, I've told clients, you're a lot better off being deported than you are being prosecuted. Sometimes the opposite. It's a tactical decision.
Yeah. But bottom line, you say the Democrats who jumped all over this and championed this man have egg on their face tonight.
Well, a lot of people have egg in their face because there's a lot of the Democrats, a lot of the radicals on the left have made champions out of horrible, horrible people. The fellow at Columbia that was deported, Mangione. I mean, we are picking our wrong heroes. And, it's one thing to say these folks may have been denied their rights, but to kind of make them into heroes sends a very, very bad message. Look, the ultimate goal of deportation, the ultimate goal of denying people visas is preventive. You mentioned my book, The Preventive State. And in The Preventive State, I go into the traditional use of deportation as a preventive mechanism. It goes back to the Bible where people were exiled. It goes back to common law where kings exiled people who were thought dangerous. And deportation is a form of exile, and denying people the right to come into this country the way Trump has done for some students is also a preventive mechanism designed to prevent them from...
And you say it's good. In cases, it can be good and necessary.
That's right, and that's why we have to strike a balance. In my book, The Preventive State, I try to create a framework for when it's appropriate to deport people, to prosecute people preventively, and when it's not. Look, we've made terrible mistakes in the name of prevention. We put 110,000 Japanese Americans, mostly citizens, into camps after we failed to prevent Pearl Harbor. We tortured people after we failed to prevent 9/11. Israel is accused of overreacting for failing to prevent October 7th. So in my book, I argue and I prove that when a country fails to take appropriate preventive actions and a horrible event occurs, it will often overreact after the fact and do things it shouldn't have done. So prevention is very important, not only for the security of the country, but it also protects the civil liberties of the country if it's done right. But it has to be done right.
You have a whole chapter in this book, The Preventive State, on free speech, but you make the argument there that, because we've been hearing a lot of criticism of the government for arresting students who are visiting here on visas after they protested the war on Gaza. You make the case those students don't have the same rights to free speech that we Americans have.
Well, not at all. First, they have no rights to free speech when they try to get into the country. They can be kept out of the country if the government doesn't like what they're going to say. So they have no free speech rights. If they have visas, they have to comply with their visas. So they don't have the right, for example, to make speeches that are inconsistent with the terms of their visa. If they have green cards, then they have the same rights as citizens do, as long as their green cards were appropriately obtained. If they say on their green card application that they're here to study and they have no interest in having demonstrations or encampments, and then it can be proved that they always had an interest in encampments, they too can be denied their rights. So I have a chapter on free speech. I also have a chapter on whether we should bomb Iran. I mean, what more decision could we possibly have than whether or not we should take action to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons? I have a chapter on COVID. I have chapters on almost everything that faces us.
Everything we're arguing about, everything that society is arguing about right now. But bottom line, you make the point, and it's a compelling one, that these students on these university campuses who've been leading all these protests are guests in this country. They do not have the right to do and say as they please, especially if it is stoking illegal action. The book is The Preventive State. It's a great read. I hope you'll come back because we've barely touched the tip of the iceberg. Let's do the chapter on Iran and the chapter on Harvard next when you come on.
Sure. I'm actually finishing a book about Harvard called Trump to Harvard. Go fund yourself.
Yeah, careful. Make sure you get the right F word there.
I got the right word. We're very careful.
Alan Dershowitz, Professor Emeritus from Harvard. Thank you so much. We're going to have you back. Great. Have a good weekend.
Thank you too.
All right, coming up. They got him. The devil in the Ozarks is back behind bars literally just a couple hours ago. Where was he all this time? We're going to speak to his former boss next. Plus, Mad Men is one of the best American television series of all time, and its creator is here to tell me about his brand new project. You're going to want to hear about it. All right, we're following more breaking news. The fugitive known as the Devil in the Ozarks was captured after 12 days on the run. NewsNation was first to report the news of his capture. It happened just over 2 hours ago. Our sources say it was the Border Patrol Tactical Unit, known as BORTAC, that actually found the ex-cop who was convicted of rape and murder. It appears Hardin didn't get very far. He was reportedly found less than 2 miles from the prison from which he escaped. My next guest tonight was Hardin's boss at the Eureka Springs Police Department in Arkansas back in the 90s. Retired Police Chief Earl Hyatt joins me on the phone. Chief, great to have you. First, want to get your reaction to the capture of Hardin found this afternoon.
We are very happy and very relieved.
Yeah, this was not somebody we wanted out and about running around.
No, ma'am. He's a violent individual, and you know, my fear was that if he felt like it would be in his best interest to help him escape, he would have hurt somebody.
He was found just 1.5 miles from the prison. He didn't get very far in 12 days, but you know, police all along were telling us that they thought he was still in that area. Why do you think that was?
Well, you know, the units and agencies that were searching for him and containing him did a very good job, and they did not give him an avenue to escape from. I think that they did such a good job that he was forced to just lay low in the woods.
We're looking at pictures of him sitting there in the on the ground with his hands handcuffed behind his back. The BORTAC team that found him had just joined the search today. They had him fast, but local police have been searching for 12 days. They've been using bloodhounds, drones, helicopters, officers on horseback. It feels like the only thing they hadn't done was call in a psychic, so this BORTAC team must be pretty good at their jobs.
You know, I bet they're very good at their job. As I understand it, the bloodhounds had picked up a scent, and the search centered in and did locate him. And you know, I'm so thankful that Secretary Noem sent those Border Patrol agents to help search, and you know that our governor was able to send all the people that we needed, along with the U.S. Marshals and the FBI.
This man was convicted of 2 brutal crimes, a murder and a rape. He was described as a sociopath and extremely dangerous. He worked for you a brief time. It's unbelievable, but he worked in a total of 3 different police departments. You fired him. Why?
Because he was a very bad cop. He was dishonest. I caught him lying on a police report, and then I also uncovered using excessive force in arrests, and just, you know, to put it bluntly, he was a bully on the streets.
Were you surprised to learn that he had been later convicted of murder and rape?
You know, yes, I was. I was surprised. He had really fallen from the radar, and, you know, quite frankly, he was in such a small town as a police chief. I didn't even know he was chief there, but when I saw that he had been convicted of the murder, I thought, wow, I was right about him, you know, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but he is violent and had a very bad temper. But when the rape was uncovered, I was disgusted.
Yeah, it was an awful, awful crime. Well, former Chief of Police Earl Hyatt, you, among many, many others in that area, are very relieved tonight to know that this man is now back in custody and back behind bars. Chief, really appreciate you joining us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, coming up for us, professional climate warrior Greta Thunberg is seemingly done with fixing the environment, at least for the moment. So she's sailing to Gaza instead. Israel says she will be dealt with accordingly. So what exactly does that mean? Is there any cause more urgent than climate change? For international environmental activist Greta Thunberg, the answer is yes, supporting Palestinians and criticizing Israel. Tonight, the famed climate warrior turned Palestinian activist is on her way to Gaza. In fact, she's halfway there. The 22-year-old and 11 other activists left Sicily for the Gaza Strip last Sunday, and they are currently sailing past the Greek island of Crete. They're on board something called the Freedom Flotilla. It is a self-described humanitarian voyage carrying with it symbolic amounts of aid like baby formula, diapers, and medical supplies. Ms. Thunberg says she has a moral obligation to support the Palestinians in the face of what she calls Israel's, quote, genocidal campaign of annihilation and erasure, end quote. Here she is talking about that from that ship.
Israel is having a siege on Gaza and that Israel has been oppressing people for decades and decades and are committing ethnic cleansing, genocide, ecocide, and all kinds of war crimes.
Greta's flotilla had a brief detour in the past day when it picked up 4 refugees from Sudan who became stranded in the Mediterranean. Those refugees asked to get off the boat when they found out where Greta's boat was heading. As for Israel, Israel's keeping a close eye on the flotilla's movements, reportedly with drones. The IDF says it is prepared for the group's arrival and will, quote, act accordingly. Israel's Navy says it will block Greta and her companions from ever entering Israel's territorial waters. Prediction betting site Polymarket has Greta's chances of entering Gaza at just 4%. For more on this, we're joined by Michael Oren. He was Israel's ambassador to the United States. Ambassador, great to have you here. All right, all puns aside and Polymarket betting things aside, this clash between Greta's flotilla and the IDF could create an international incident. The British government has asked Israel to make sure nothing terrible happens to this group. What is the IDF prepared to do when this flotilla gets close to Gaza?
Good to be with you, Elizabeth. I mean, this should be our biggest problem. Okay, we're in the middle of a huge war in Gaza. We've got fighting going on in the north in Lebanon. We've got Houthi missiles aimed at Tel Aviv. I live in South Tel Aviv. Every night we run to a bomb shelter. We have the situation in Syria, which is very unstable, and we have the Iran nuclear issue. In the middle of this, Greta Thunberg coming with her boat. Okay, but let's address it. This is not the first flotilla Israel's have faced. Probably the most famous or infamous was in 2010, the Mavi Marmara, where our Navy SEALs tried to intercept a boat that was filled with very large, how should I say, thugs who were disguised as peace demonstrators. They, in fact, were Islamic extremists who were armed. And our Navy SEALs landed on these boats with paint guns, and they were set upon and beaten and stabbed and shot. So it was a real terrible incident, and they shot back, and they actually killed some.
So they had more than paint guns. Then.
No, they had pistols.
Okay.
They came down with sidearms, but mostly with paint guns. And so I think we learned a lesson from that. That if you're
so what's the IDF going to do when they get close?
So
by the way, they call it the selfie flotilla. The whole thing seems ridiculous.
No,
but...
well, it's a publicity stunt, and for her, it's very good. It keeps her name in the news, all right? Maybe people aren't so thinking about climate change the way they used to, and she's used to having the international spotlight. So here she gets to maintain the international spotlight for a while. And of course, she's not bringing a flotilla to the Sudan, and she's not doing a flotilla to Congo or to other places where there are wars that are actually much bigger and much more destructive than that's going on in Gaza. Nothing about the Ukraine. Nothing about the million Muslims put in concentration camps in China. She's not sending a flotilla there. She's sending it to Gaza. Okay, what is the Israeli Navy going to do? It's probably going to stop them. It's going to stop them by, getting boats to cut off their route.
And they'll make a big to-do out of it.
But I will tell you something that, I'm not a representative of the Israeli government anymore, and I'll just say my personal opinion is I think we should let her in.
Why?
First of all, there's no port in Gaza for her to
So she'd
anchor.
have to swim in.
She'd have to go. No, she'd have to swim in, or go to Ashdod, which is where food from Gaza does come in. But attempts to deliver aid to Gaza, as you know, have all failed. The U.S. Navy tried to build a pier; it failed. The U.S. Air Force tried to airdrop. It failed. Because what goes on in Gaza is the minute you try to bring in aid, two things happen. Either other people, thousands of people will jump on the aid and make it impossible to distribute, but more likely Hamas will get it. And Hamas will take it at gunpoint. They'll shoot people who try to get the aid, as they shot about roughly 50, 60 people in the last week trying to get aid.
We're not, that's a little, that is disputed. And the IDF has released a statement saying that it did open fire, warning shots, and then shot at people when they didn't stop.
But nowhere near that area. Nowhere near that area. And I have it from my own information that Israel is no way culpable for those 50, 60 people. We actually had videos of Hamas people shooting Palestinians trying to get aid. So Hamas is going to take that aid. It's going to do two things with it. It's going to feed its own terrorists with that aid, and then it's going to sell it back to Palestinians at grossly inflated prices so that Hamas will enrich itself through the aid. So if Greta Thunberg wants to have that experience, she should be my guest. But again, I'm not a representative of the government.
Okay, I only have 10 seconds, but I do have to ask you about this plan right now to arm Abu Shabab, which is a gang inside Gaza that is opposed to Hamas. Critics inside Israel call this complete madness, the equivalent of arming ISIS in Gaza. Why is the Israeli government arming a gang inside Gaza?
Yeah, I can't defend it, but I'll explain it. And explain it as this is, if you arm people, Palestinians, who are opposed to Hamas, and some of these Palestinians are working for the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, which is what certainly the previous administration, the Biden administration, wanted Israel to do, to engage the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, then you are saving Israeli lives. Okay? They are fighting Hamas, and your own people are saving.
Aren't you fomenting a terrible civil war inside Gaza?
Well, there already is a war in Gaza, so Israelis are going to make a very harsh conclusion that, better that they have Palestinians fighting Palestinians than have Israelis fighting Palestinians. But I have a long historical memory, and I was a soldier in Lebanon in 1982 when Israel also armed Christian militias to fight. And you know what happened there? The Salvador flotilla massacre.
Yeah.
Got to be very, very careful.
All right. Ambassador Michael Oren, please come back. You're always welcome here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up for us, I'll be joined on set by the creator of Mad Men about his brand new production. It's about a delusional, racist, and narcissistic actor. You may have heard of him, John Wilkes Booth. And remember, download our NewsNation app for the latest news on our top stories of the night. You can find it on the Apple App Store and Google Play. How we choose to make our mark on the world is what makes some of us heroes and others of us villains. Take a look back at American history and you'll find plenty of lone wolf assassins who thought they would be celebrated, lionized, but were instead disparaged. Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh, United Healthcare CEO shooter Luigi Mangione, although he is still being lionized in a lot of corners, are just two examples of violence as perceived somehow acceptable political alternative to, then it all dates back to a guy who wanted to be a famous actor, but is instead known as America's most infamous assassin. That man was John Wilkes Booth. He worked in the theater and assassinated Abraham Lincoln in a theater. And now he's back in the theater, but this time as the subject of a brand new play that recently made its world premiere.
Welcome to an evening with John Wilkes Booth.
John Wilkes Booth, one night only, is on stage in Booth's hometown of Baltimore, from now until the end of the month. And the man behind the play is Matthew Weiner. If you haven't heard his name, you for sure have heard his words. He's 9-time Emmy Award winner and creator of one of the greatest television shows of all time.
That's the way it works. There are no credits on commercials.
You got the Clio.
It's your job. I give you money, you give me ideas.
And you never say thank you.
That's what the money is for. You're young. You will get your recognition. And honestly, it is absolutely ridiculous to be 2 years into your career and counting your ideas. Everything to you is an opportunity. And you should be thanking me every morning when you wake up, along with Jesus, for giving you another day.
That's an iconic scene. Matthew Weiner joins me now. I got to tell you, even as I watched that show is so good.
Thank you.
It is like 19 years, actually 18. July 19th marks 18 years since Mad Men debuted. People still watch this thing, quote this thing.
I don't know what to tell you.
Discuss this thing.
It was, I mean, it's not your goal. Some of it is the technological universe that we're in, where things are available. And some of it, I think, is that it kind of has a timelessness to it, which we tried. Even though it's a period piece, it's just got, it's 92 hours without a murder. So it's kind of on a human scale, and I think that people identify with that.
And the actors, my God.
Oh, I mean,
the
that was
casting
amazing. That was amazing.
All right, congrats on the play. How did you pick John Wilkes Booth as somebody to write an entire play about? This man who has gone down in infamy in history.
Well, it's very interesting that you were talking about Luigi Mangione, who is also a 26-year-old from Baltimore, and that you were talking about Timothy McVeigh, who, when he was arrested, was wearing a T-shirt with John Wilkes Booth on it.
Was he?
Yes.
I'd forgotten that
Yes.
detail.
He is the hero of these people, but that's not really what the Proud Boys, the disenchanted white racist movement. And what really got me into it, though, is that I found out that he was so narcissistic because I'd read that he was disgruntled about the amount of money being offered for his reward.
He was insulted
and I was like,
because he thought the reward money
Yes.
for information leading to his arrest.
Yes.
He went on the run for several days after
10 days.
10 days. And when he went down south and thought he would be
He was in
hailed as a
Maryland.
hero.
He was in Maryland, and he had an escape route because they had had a kidnapping plot before that, but he thought the war would turn around. He thought people would rally behind him. And nobody was happy about Abraham Lincoln being killed. This war had gone on, was supposed to go on for 3 months, had gone on for 4 years. And I think also the federal government had proved, the Union had proved that it was dangerous to harbor him. So, but he's so defiant till the end, and it becomes obvious that he actually has this, well, you know, it's funny because he idolizes John Brown, who was the exact opposite philosophy. John Brown, who was the, armed the slaves at Harper's Ferry, because he wants to be famous.
Yeah.
So there's really this thing between his brother, who's a famous actor, his father, who's a very famous actor, being thrown into poverty at a young age. They were rich and then they weren't, and I think that they felt that someone had taken their whiteness,
Someone
believe it
had
or not.
wronged them.
Someone had wronged them, exactly. So, and looking at that period, it is a technological change in the 1840s, very similar to now. And when the Know-Nothings came along, who sound a lot like this part of America, their biggest enemies were immigrants, the Irish at that time, liberals, who the Communist Manifesto was written in 1848, and women. And then comes abolition.
You say you've long been fascinated about the question of why people do terrible things. And I'm curious, as you've investigated and sort of grappled with that, are they terrible people or are they just normal people who end up doing terrible things?
When you write about a character, you try and see them as a human being. Everybody has a reason for what they do. There's no doubt he's terrible, but I was interested in the reason. And I was also interested in the fact that I knew that we were living in the shadow of what he did.
How so?
I think that the message of the play to some degree is for people, everything in the play sounds contemporary. Every single argument about North and South, rich and poor, white and black, every single aspect is going on right now in this country.
Rural, urban for us.
Rural, urban, of course, and Maryland is the symbol of that, believe me. So you sort of, Baltimore in particular, so you sort of are saying, like, are we living, I mean, the lines in the play. The Civil War is not really over.
In many ways, past is prologue.
Exactly, exactly. So I think it's important for people to know about that. I think it's important for people to see that even though he had this disruptive childhood, he has a brother who's not like him, who was raised in the same family. So, like, you can't really use the trauma story, but some of it's his character. And the other thing is that he really wanted to be seen. And I think he felt displaced. And I'm not making any excuses for him because violence is not what most of us pick.
No.
But it is a big part of American culture.
It's a big part of the human experience. I think all of us
True.
want to be seen, and the play is really fascinating because it really delves into what happens when you feel like you're not. The play is John Wilkes Booth, Matthew Weiner. Congratulations.
Thank you. What a
I'm
pleasure.
hoping to see it when that play comes to Broadway. Fingers crossed.
That's the plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Great to be
All
here.
right, coming up next, Chris Cuomo joins me live. He's talking to Kilmar Abrego Garcia's attorney in just a moment, and he'll have a preview for us. All right, Chris Cuomo's here. He's got more on our lead story today with the return to the United States of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You're going to speak to his lawyer in just a few minutes. I know you've done some pre-interview chatting with them. What does he make of all this?
Well, he obviously thinks it's a trumped-up set of charges. You know, it's always interesting to me, whenever somebody is controversial, they always get all three names. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
You only know if somebody has three names if they're in some kind of trouble. Look, my top is about framing what this issue is really about, okay? Laken Riley, her family deserves sympathy. People who are killed deserve sympathy. People who are murdered, let alone at the hands of an illegal entrant, deserve sympathy. But the idea that illegal entrants are very important because they are the root of a homicidal horde is nonsense. The idea that this is about the worst criminals in our society is nonsense. If it were, you wouldn't be looking at Garcia. You'd be dealing with extreme Islamists. You'd have a hyper-focus on them.
Yeah.
That's too hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as well with one side against the other. So I want to hear what Mr. Garcia thinks is justice in this situation and how he justifies the behavior back in 2022 that was passed over by authorities, but these charges are not absurd.
No, they're not.
But I also think Garcia's getting lucky, because if I were he, I'd rather deal with what they're charging him with than what I thought was going to happen, which was a reconsideration of his fear stay. I don't think it holds anymore, and I think that was their straightest course to getting rid of him.
He will get a fair shot here. We do justice in the United States the right way. He will get his day in court.
Yeah.
He will get a chance to face his accuser. The government has to prove its case, and I think that's a lot better than what he'd get down in El Salvador. That's for sure.
That's for sure. But
All right.
remember, he was here, not there. Elizabeth, have a good weekend. I'll see you Monday.
All right.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.